Today's episode was sponsored by Casey over on Patreon. So thank you so much, Casey. That's upside down. Thank you so much, Casey. And why don't we go ahead and get this up on the wall? Yeah. So yeah, there it is. It won't actually be in today's episode because I shot that one a little weird and I didn't get my shit together in time to put it up on the wall. But I promise it's there and it will be in future episodes and it will always be a part of the tapestry. So yeah. Although honestly, I feel like Casey probably doesn't even care that the patch won't be in the episode today because they don't even know it exists yet. It was actually a surprise from their partner Doug. So, surprise! You have a really thoughtful and considerate partner who likes you. If you would like to surprise your partner with a patch, then head over to my Patreon because not only does it help support the channel, but it also allows me to inject myself into other people's relationships like I just did with Casey and Doug. Like, I can't say for sure that this patch officially means that we're a throuple, but, well, I can't imagine that it doesn't. And on that awkward note, let's start the episode. Hello, nitwits, and welcome to Knitting Time with Willie. I'm your host, Willie Muse, joined as always by my co-host, Knitcalis. And today it's time for yet another exciting episode of my moderately viewed series, Improving My Life Through Content. Improving my life through content. You know, if I had known I was going to be using that title screen more than once, I probably would have spent a little more time on it. I made it in literally 5 minutes and I hate it with every fiber of my being. Whatever, I'm stuck with it now. For those of you who don't know, and based on the view count for the last time I did one of these, that's most of you, in this series I spend 30 days making changes that I think will improve my life, and then I motivate myself to stick to said changes by making content about my experience, because content is the only thing that motivates me anymore, because the internet has stolen my soul. Anywho, last time I did my best to lose weight by sticking to a healthy diet for a month, and against all odds, it did actually work. Granted, it didn't work as well as I was hoping it would, but it did work, so I figured I might as well do it again. And because last time I did my best to improve my physical self, I feel like it's only appropriate that this time around I try my hand at addressing the much, much bigger problem that is my mental self. I can't tell you for sure exactly what's going on up in the old skull box here, but what I can tell you is that it's an absolute mess. Anxiety, stress, intrusive thoughts, a little bit of depression here and there. The majority of the problems plaguing my life stem, well, from my stem, and if there's anything I should be spending 30 days trying to fix, it's the oversized ball sack that lives in my skull. With that in mind, I decided I would spend the next month doing the brain equivalent of a healthy diet. Although once I decided that, I realized that I wasn't entirely sure what exactly that might be. After all, I feel like a lot of people would say that the brain equivalent of a healthy diet is just a healthy diet. Proper nutrition can greatly improve your mental health in a lot of ways, so the case could be made that if my goal truly is to strengthen up the old cranium meatball, then I should just eat healthy again. Unfortunately, I already did the diet thing last time, so doing it again, even if it's from a different perspective, doesn't really feel worth my time. Also, not for nothing, but I refuse to ever have another chicken breast for lunch. You can't make me, and I will kill you dead if you try. And since changing up how I eat is not an option, I had to try and think of some other change I could make for a month that might help improve my mental health. So I thought about it, and then I got bored with thinking about it and went on Twitter. Then I sat in a dark room for about an hour, feeling depressed about the person I've become and anxious for my future. But then I went back on Twitter, and that's when it hit me. I'm garbage and everyone else is happier than I am. And after those last dark thoughts crossed my mind, I realized that it's possible that social media might be impacting my mental health negatively. And if I'm looking for a way to clear some of the cobwebs out of my cranium, I should start by going offline for a little bit. If you follow me on any of my platforms, then you know that I use social media way too much, and I do it in a way that's clearly causing my mental health to decay like a moldy orange in the back of a refrigerator. Slow, but messy. I am not even joking when I say that I have met people in person who only know me through Twitter, and the first thing that they say to me is, "I'm very concerned about your online presence." And honestly, they're right to say it. It's clear to anyone who knows me, myself very much included, that I should probably take a break from social media. And so rather than blabbling on, I'm just gonna do it. Like last time, I will check back in with you guys throughout to let you know how it's going, and then when it's all done, I'll meet you back here to reflect on the experience. So, yeah, let's do this. Wish me luck, because this one's gonna be tough. Alright, I've been off social media for about a day now, and well, it sucks ass. I've never had to try to give up smoking before, but whatever it is I'm going through right now feels like a very light version of what I imagine it must feel like to give up smoking. Like, I'm just kind of jittery, and I have no idea what to do with my hands most of the time. It's only been about 12 hours, and I'm already realizing that social media is a way bigger issue in my life than I thought it was. And that's honestly saying something, because I already thought that it was ruining my life. I have accidentally gone to Twitter no fewer than 80 times since I officially signed off. It's apparently become so much a part of my muscle memory that I'll just do it instinctively whenever I tune out for long enough, and it's only when I actually get to the website and see that it's blocked on my phone that I snap back into reality and remember, like, oh yeah, I'm not doing that this month. Which, like, yeah, you heard that right. I literally had to block Twitter on my phone because I knew that if I didn't, I would absolutely cheat and try to sign back in. Like, I have gone off willingly because I decided that I don't want to be on social media this month, but that said, I still really wanna. Not being able to go on Twitter feels like a weird combination of FOMO and willful ignorance. Like, the best way I can describe it is that it kind of feels like I'm sitting in a house, and on one side of the house I can hear that there's a carnival going on, but I can't go outside and join in on the fun. And then on the other side of the house I can hear gunshots, but I can't do anything to find out where they came from or if they're coming for me next. All I can do is just sit in the house and try my best to ignore all the hubbub that I know for a fact is going on just beyond what I can see. Maybe it's just because the withdrawal is making my brain crack, but one thing I've been thinking a lot about today is the allegory of the cave, where there are a bunch of people who are chained up in a cave looking at shadows on the wall, and since the only thing that they've ever known is the shadows, they just believe that the shadows are reality. I feel like I probably didn't explain that very well, but I don't know, you're on YouTube, so if you don't already know what I'm talking about, then do some light searching for Plato's Cave, and I'm sure you'll be able to find someone who can make it make sense. I can't fight all your battles for you. And yeah, right now I basically feel like someone who stepped out of the cave for a little while, but then someone went and chained me back up in there, and now I'm doing my best to look at the shadows on the wall and believe that that's all there is, even though I know for a fact that there's way more. I feel like it goes over my head sometimes just how much information I'm absorbing while I passively scroll through my apps, and now that it's gone, everything feels just the slightest bit too simple for my liking. And obviously, it's barely been a day, so I'm still very much in the early stages of withdrawal. Like, I knew that there was going to be an adjustment period when I set out to do this. I just didn't know that it would be this intense. At worst, I thought I'd be annoyed here and there that I didn't have things to read during my downtime, but instead, I feel like my body is going through literal chemical changes that I did not expect. Although that said, the fact that I currently sound like I'm describing the early stages of rehab is probably a sign that I should have gotten off social media way sooner than I did, so I don't know, I feel like I'm probably just being dramatic, so I'm gonna stop recording myself now and go sit on my hands for a few hours until it's time to bed. Hopefully by the next time I talk to you guys, things will have settled down a little bit. Nope. It's day 2 of my social media embargo, and if anything, things have gotten a little bit worse. Although for the record, please know that they're not that bad. Like, I feel like I was laying it on pretty thick with yesterday's check-in, so I want you guys to know that I'm not like huddled over a bucket barfing because I can't go on Facebook, because, well, I feel like that's how I made it sound. I can't help it if my prose are evocative. If we're being honest, most of the time it's not even really an issue. I'm doing other stuff and my mind is occupied, so I'm not really thinking about social meds. It's only when I let myself chill long enough that my mind dips just below the point of being overstimulated that I get the urge to sign back in, and it's when that happens and I have to tell myself no that I start to feel a little bit, let's say, on edge. Nighttime is the worst. These past couple of nights I've had even more trouble falling asleep than usual, and I think it's because I've genuinely forgotten how to be alone with my own thoughts. Actually, I don't really know if I ever knew how to be alone with my own thoughts, but at least when I could go on Twitter, it wasn't an issue. Normally, I probably wouldn't have even done one of these check-ins 2 days in a row, but I genuinely didn't know what to do with myself while I was trying to fall asleep last night, so I ended up writing this. So yeah, just know that if the words I'm saying right now sound like they were written by somebody who was high on ZQL, that's because they were. More than anything, I just feel like I need an outlet, and if I can't find one, it does not feel great. Although again, I'm fine for the most part. I'm trying very hard not to sound as dramatic as last time, but, well, it's honestly kind of hard. Although that said, for as overblown as a lot of the things I said yesterday were, there is one crazy thing I said that I actually still agree with, and that's that I do genuinely think that something chemical is happening in my body right now. Gun to my head, if I had to guess what that jittery feeling I keep talking about is, my guess would be that it's serotonin withdrawal. I am 100% sure that I'd be incorrect in saying that, but I do feel that whatever it is at the very least in the same ballpark. So, normally the energy that I put into writing this check-in would have been used to create a series of terrible tweets, and from those tweets, I'd get whatever mild high comes from 8 strangers, at least 2 of whom are probably bots, pressing a little heart button to tell me that they liked something I wrote. And does that high last? God, no, of course not, but it's a simple exchange and it makes me feel good for a moment, so I taught myself to do it more than I probably should. When I think about it long enough, I honestly start to feel like one of those lab rats who are taught to press a button in order to get a snack, and eventually they just keep pressing the button over and over again because that's what they've been conditioned to do. And if that really is the case, then right now I'm in the part of the experiment where the scientists stop giving out food and the rat doesn't really know how to handle it, so they just keep sadly pressing the button over and over, hoping that something will eventually drop down, even though it never actually does. Those experiments are sad. I don't know why people do them. Scientists are dicks. And you know, you'd think that the fact that it's led me to compare myself to a sad rat in a cage would mean that I'm happy to see it go, but the truth is that I still genuinely miss social media. It's an incredible platform. I love having a way to write something and have people read it immediately. I love being able to view all these incredible corners of the world from the palm of my hand. I think that social media is a genuine marvel of the modern world. I just also think that maybe it's too much for my tiny little rat brain to handle sometimes. Hopefully I stop pressing my tiny little paws against that button soon. We'll see. Okay, so it's been 4 days now, and I'm still adjusting. I hope. It's either that or I'm just broken, so. I still keep instinctually trying to go on social media in a way that's honestly starting to get upsetting at this point. I feel like that probably should have stopped by now. And truth told, the only change that I've really noticed so far is the whole having trouble sleeping thing, which isn't great. The moment my head hits the pillow, I just get anxious, and I don't know if it's the result of me not going on social media anymore, or if that's just what I'm like, and social media was a way I had been dealing with it. But whatever the case is, I'm not a fan. The past few days have been such an unexpected slog that it genuinely has me questioning why I'm doing this thing at all. If the only return on investment I get on this endeavor is a bunch of sleepless nights and a video that will almost certainly bomb, then part of me feels like maybe it's not worth spending 30 days of my life on it. On the other hand, though, the idea that I'd set out to cut social media out of my life and I'd only last 4 days is deeply pathetic, so I do want to stick this thing out, if only to say that I could do it. And so in order to stop myself from tapping out, I decided to take some time to remind myself why I'm doing this. You know, what was it about social media that made me think I would be much better off if it was out of my life completely? And I guess that the simple answer to that is that it makes me feel bad. Which is weird, you know, because like I said, it also makes me feel good, but I feel like the good that it makes me feel only lasts in short bursts. That quick high fades pretty fast, and a lot of the time I'm just left feeling bad and sad and mad a lot of the time too, especially when politics are involved. I know this sounds petty, but whatever good feeling might come from having 8 likes on my tweet is quickly replaced by the shitty feeling that comes when I realize that the tweet below it has 800 likes. I think that social media opens us up to so many amazing possibilities, but those possibilities can be a little bit crushing sometimes. After all, it can be really hard to focus on the few possibilities it actually follows through on when compared to the infinite others it just kind of rubs in your face. Being on Twitter makes me feel insecure and bitter and anxious and sad and all sorts of other ways that I don't particularly like, all because it's made feeling content next to impossible for me. Which is insane because I honestly should be content. I objectively have a very nice life and a lot of things to be grateful for. It just doesn't always feel like a lot when I compare it to, you know, the entire rest of humanity. Like, okay, 8 million seems like a huge number on its own, you know, but when you think about the idea of infinity, it feels a lot closer to 0 than anything. And really, that's social media in a nutshell, you know, it's social infinity. If that makes sense. I'm not sure if it does though. Full disclosure, I was high on ZQL while I was writing this one too. And honestly, with that in mind, I should probably call it there for the day. I'm actually going away for a wedding for a few days, so it will be a while until my next check-in. Hopefully that'll give me enough time to adjust to the point where I sound less whiny. I mean, I doubt it based on the way things have been going so far, but maybe a change in scenery will do me good. Alright, I'm back from my trip, and all things considered, it was actually really nice. I went to a wedding, I got to see a lot of my family. I'm pretty sure I gained back all of the weight that I lost when I did the last one of these videos, but other than that, it was actually a really good time. It was such a good time, in fact, that I actually ended up extending my stay an extra few days, which means that it's been a pretty long time since my last check-in, and honestly, I kind of feel like that might be for the best because I don't really have that much to say about that time beyond it's been a while since I've been on social media, and truth told, that doesn't really sound like enough to make for an interesting part of a video. And actually, it's not even all that true. I feel like I technically have been on social media. I'm certainly not using it the way I actually want to, but to say that I've cut it out of my life 100% would be a lie because as I'm learning, it's kind of unavoidable. People send me links to TikToks and articles pad themselves out by embedding tweets. There are certain people who I only communicate with through Facebook Messenger, and a lot of the times the top result for something I'm trying to figure out is from Reddit. And sometimes social media is avoidable, but I just don't want to avoid it because I feel like if I did, it would be something illogical that I'd only be doing out of principle. I think the most I broke in my goal for the month was when I was watching the congressional hearings, and after they aired, CNN had on these two blonde ladies who clearly used the same plastic surgeon, and they were discussing how people would react to the proceedings, and listening to their coverage, I couldn't help but think, like, I don't know how much I trust these two random women, but I did want to know how people were reacting to it, so I went on Twitter. I stayed logged out and searched a couple of key terms and was able to confirm that thankfully, yes, even with all this new information coming out, most people still think that Mike Pence sucks. And while I guess my little transgression means that I can't technically say I was off social media for the entire month, I feel like spiritually, it doesn't count. In an alternate universe where all I was using Twitter for was as a news source, I don't think it would be as detrimental to my mental health as it is in my current terrible universe that I exist in. I think for me, it's very clearly the social parts of social media that cause all of my problems. And in that regard, I've gone pretty much cold turkey, which is why it's honestly very disappointing that I don't have more to report to you guys today. Social media has been such an obviously toxic presence in my life for so long now that part of me genuinely thought that if I was ever able to completely cut it out of my life, I might very well develop superpowers. Instead, I just feel like same old, normal, non-telekinesis having me with all of my same problems and absolutely no use for that cape I just bought. Like, I've still managed to find ways to stress myself out and negatively compare myself to others and all that other fun stuff that I used to do when I went online. I just have to do it the analog way now. Today, one of my best friends told me they were pregnant, and that made me feel way worse about where my life is at and who I've become as a person than any tweet could ever do. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was also genuinely thrilled for them. I just feel like maybe social media has strengthened that narcissistic stress muscle in my brain so much that this is just who I am now, regardless of if I'm online or not. And granted, it's really hard for me to tell when I'm feeling good or bad in the moment, so there is a chance that I'm in a way better place mentally than I was when I started this thing 3 weeks ago. But that said, if you were to ask me in this moment how I feel, I kind of feel like the only thing I've gotten out of my social media embargo is a lot more boring moments where I don't know what to do with myself. I'll check back in with you guys in a few days, and hopefully that will have changed. Just because I haven't been posting to social media in the past few weeks, that doesn't mean that there haven't been things that I wanted to post to social media in the past few weeks, because, well, old habits die hard. I still haven't gotten over that reflex where my brain has a stupid thought and I think, hey, I should tweet that. And because I couldn't actually tweet that, I figured I should write it down and save it for right now, I guess. Over the past 3 weeks, I've saved... Hi, kitty. My cat jumped up. I'm just gonna... You gonna settle down, or... So anyway, over the past few weeks, I've saved every tweet that I would have sent in my Notes app, and Jesus Christ. So anyway, over the course of the past few weeks, I've saved everything that I would have posted to social media in my Notes app, and I'm gonna read what I wrote back to you now and reflect on it, I guess. Sorry in advance. Okay, so the first time I just... Alright, so the first time I had the idea to write down some of my tweets, I was watching the congressional hearings, and so the first few are kind of like a series about that, I guess. And the first one is just, Trump is literally Regina George at the end of Mean Girls. I guess it's true. It's just a stupid way of saying that he started a riot, which did happen. The next one I wrote after someone said that he threw a plate of ketchup against the wall, and so I wrote, okay, but throwing a plate full of ketchup against a wall is just a normal day for Amy Klobuchar. Not sure who I thought my Amy Klobuchar hot takes were for, but I felt the need to write that thought down for some reason. The January 6 hearings are my favorite episode of Veep yet. That is a stupid joke and I hate it. That's a joke that like the Lincoln Project would have written or something. Do I suck? Okay, this next one I think definitely has a typo in it. It says, stop calling Republicans testifying against Trump brave. They're monsters who have made a deal in exchange for LeBlanc. I think that was supposed to say leniency. Although, I don't know, maybe I thought that the Republicans were making a deal in order to meet Matt LeBlanc from Friends. I was definitely drunk at this point in the hearings, so. Thankfully, that ends the political portion of my tweets, which is good because nobody cares about my thoughts on politics, and I don't know why I keep trying to act like they do. This next one says, air conditioners should have no other speeds besides high. Anything else is just a waste of my time. That's true, but probably not a thought I should be broadcasting to the public because, well, the world is ending because of stuff like that, and it's not a good look for me. Whatever, I run hot. This one is a very specific thought. I wrote, I want an entire documentary following up on that little girl that told Luann that she wanted to be a model, and then Luann said she had a beautiful face and fixing her body would be easy. That's a reference to an old episode of The Real Housewives of New York, and it was a genuinely insane moment, but not sure why I felt the need to tweet about it about a decade after the fact. Alright, the next few tweets are also a little bit of a series, but they're not about the congressional hearings. They're about the actresses who starred in Boy Meets World for some reason. I just got on a theme, and the first one is PSA. The lady who played Angela on Boy Meets World was born in the 60s. which I found that out and I thought it was insane. She was much older than the rest of the actors. Also, the lady who played Rachel was one of the White Chicks. That's true. I was watching White Chicks and I was like, hey, that's Rachel. I believe she's a famous porn star now. I don't know if these were supposed to be replies to one another or their own separate tweets, but the next one is also Topanga is married to that racist Cinnamon Toast Crunch guy. I don't know if you guys remember that story. There's a guy who found shrimp tails in his Cinnamon Toast Crunch, and then he got canceled, and he's married to Topanga from Boy Meets World. So, okay, this one is at least an attempt at a joke. Idea for a paneer-flavored coffee made with non-dairy creamer. And non is spelled like non because I think my thought there was that non-dairy would be paneer. No, I definitely suck. Do you think Li Shang sings "I'll Make a Man Out of You" to Mulan during sex? That one's kind of funny. I should start using a parasol. No, I shouldn't. Although I don't like being tan, so maybe. I prefer myself pale. This one started as a joke, but then it just became something that I had to find out for real because my platonic friend Matt had a very bad toothache and we weren't sure if he had dental insurance, and I wrote, how bad does a toothache have to be before it stops being covered by dental and starts being covered by medical? As it turns out, that's not a funny thought to have. Alright, I was definitely drunk when I wrote this one because it's just a link to a Wikipedia page for the cuisine of the Falkland Islands. I got drunk one night and decided that I really wanted to go to the Falkland Islands. I don't think it'll happen for me though because, well, for one thing, I don't have a passport. I should probably figure that out. I wonder what my life would be like if I were Icelandic. I think I'd be happier. Life would be slower, I'd be friends with a sheep. I'd probably be attractive, like all Scandinavian people seem to be. Here's something I do kind of wonder about Scandinavian people. Like, you know how they're all kind of attractive? So, like, if they meet someone who looks like me, do they register that as unattractive? Or is it, like, exotic because I'm not, like, tall and handsome and blonde like they are? I need to stop talking about other cultures. I'm going to get in trouble one day. I'm jealous of Uber drivers for how many phone calls they get. Yeah. It is weird though, right? I've never been in an Uber where someone wasn't taking a phone call. And it's like, I've gotten like 3 phone calls in the past year. How come you have so many friends, Uber driver? What are you doing that I'm not? Smart House was way ahead of its time. I was watching the movie Smart House. Holds up. Alright, my love of air conditioning rears its ugly head again. This one just says, there are very few people who I wouldn't kill in exchange for AC. It's true, but I probably shouldn't say it. This is it. This is the week I finally get into Vampire Weekend. That actually didn't end up happening. I tried listening to a lot of their music and liked some of their songs, but mostly it just kind of sounded like Jimmy Buffett for people who are too pale to go to the beach. So it didn't really stick for me, personally. Okay, this one just says, happy birthday, Jesus. And I think I wrote that on the 4th of July. So that would have been the joke there. Although still not really much of a joke. Alright, it was definitely the 4th of July because I was definitely at a party, because afterwards I wrote this: I'm not sure if my social anxiety has gotten better or if I've just stopped talking to new people, but either way, it's bliss. I always think I'm over my social anxiety, but then I talk to someone and I'm like, oh, I'm just not doing this as much anymore. How fucked up is it that they're called pipe cleaners because you can use them to clean pipes? That one actually did blow my mind when I figured it out. Okay, but where do the crawdads go for good Chinese food? I was listening to Where the Crawdads Sing and was like, hey, I should write a joke about this. No, I shouldn't have. The fact that it's July and corporations are still showing me commercials about gay people just feels like laziness on their part. That actually is true. Like, whenever I see a commercial in July and people are like, ooh, we love gay people, it's like, no, you don't. You're on to patriotism now. Get your shit together. You should have planned better for this. I hate when friends of mine have babies because then I know for sure that I'm not their favorite person. That one's true. And fun fact, I actually wrote that before I found out that my friend was pregnant. I'm just like that. It's insane how old I am. That one definitely had to involve wine in some way. Okay, of all of the tweets that I wrote, this is the only one where I think without a shadow of a doubt that I should eventually tweet it. It says, melatonin, a sleep aid. Melatonin. Sporty Spice doing her best to apologize. I think that's solid. And I was clearly riding that Sporty Spice high I was feeling from my last tweet because this next one says, insane that 40% of the Spice Girls were named Mel. Which is true. I don't think I've ever met a woman named Mel before. The fact that they had 2 in a group of 5 does seem unlikely. Okay, these next few were written while I was at that wedding I talked about, and the first one is because it was a Catholic wedding, and so I wrote, the weirdest part of a Catholic mass is the part where everyone stops what they're doing and shakes hands for a couple of minutes like we just made a business deal. Which is true. I was raised Catholic, and that was always my favorite part of church, but having been away from it for a while, it is very strange that in the middle of a Catholic mass, everyone's just like, okay, handshake time. Weddings are basically just telling someone you love them enough to embarrass yourself in front of your friends and family. Yeah. Okay, there was a tall person at the wedding that I was watching a lot, and because he was so tall, I started to wonder, do tall people die younger like how Great Danes do? That's kind of a sad thought to be wondering at a wedding, but oh well. I want a Netflix series that's just women over 50 dancing at a wedding. I actually think that would do really well. It would be kind of like those Yule log things that they do around Christmas time, only instead of a fireplace, it would just be some lady named Sheila who's really getting down to the cha-cha slide. I'd watch it. There's a very cute little girl dancing on the dance floor right now, and it's weird how I could ruin this whole wedding by kidnapping her. That one's less of a joke and more of just an intrusive thought that I had. Not sure why I felt the need to write it down. Or repeat it now, for that matter. I probably shouldn't post that part. Whatever. No way that the Trivago guy is vaccinated. Whatever happened to him? Alright, this one I wrote while I was at the movies. My theory is that they made way too many Bunch of Crunch in the 90s, and they're still making their way through that original batch, and that's why they're all stale now. Like, they definitely used to be better, right? I feel like when I was a kid it was my favorite candy, but now I get them and they taste like ass. I still get them, though. I remain hopeful that one day they'll return to their prime. Alright, thankfully we've come to the end of this little experiment, and this last one is really gross, so I almost don't want to read it to you, but whatever. I've come this far. Peacock is actually only the name of the male of the species. The female is called a poo pussy. poo pussy. Poop. Alright, that went on way longer than I thought it would. Sorry about that. And though I have no doubt that that last section caused at least 80% of the people watching this video to click out, I'm still happy I did it, because sharing all of my thoughts all at once like that helped me to realize something. And that's that there's absolutely no point in me ever sharing all of my thoughts like that. Don't get me wrong, I was already well aware that the majority of my tweets are stupid and bad, but seeing a month's worth of them stacked side by side really helped to put things into perspective for me. And from that perspective, I can now see that there is absolutely no reason for me to ever tweet anything ever again. Like, ever. It might sound obvious, but I think the thing I needed to help look at the things I say online through a different lens was just time. Writing my thoughts down and saving them for later rather than just firing them off into the ether the second they popped into my mind allowed me to step away and take a deep breath and come back with fresh eyes. And those fresh eyes allowed me to accurately see just how trivial and, if we're being honest, incomprehensible a lot of my thoughts can be. Normally, the process is very fast. Like extremely fast. Like a fraction of a second fast, which is honestly kind of insane when I stop to think about it, because there are also a bunch of steps that go into me writing a single tweet. Granted, it's hard to recognize each one of those individual steps in the actual moment because they're all so quick that they're basically imperceptible, but if you actually take the time to break the whole process down, they are there. First, I stop listening to whatever conversation I'm in the middle of so that a random thought can pop into my head. Next, I allow that random thought to build and build inside my mind. I focus on it and mentally rephrase it with every permutation of words I can think of, and eventually it grows so big in my mind that I decide, like, yep, I'm definitely gonna need to say this. So I do. I pull my phone out of my pocket and hastily type something out that's riddled with typos, and then I press send and wait for people to recognize my genius. Although again, like I said, this is all happening in an instant. So when I say wait, I mean that I immediately press refresh a couple of times and see how many people have instantly validated me. And unfortunately for me, it's usually not a lot. Don't get me wrong, it's usually more validation than the garbage I'm spewing deserves, but it's also usually less than I want, which can kind of suck sometimes. After I refresh a couple of times and see how my tweet did, that's usually when the disappointment sets in, and so I put my phone away and I go about my life. Although that said, occasionally I will end up getting the exact kind of validation I had hoped for when I press send, and when that happens, I feel happy for about a nanosecond, which would be nice, except for the fact that that fleeting moment of happiness usually leads to me creating a new set of even greater expectations about where this thing I send out into the world is going to lead to. So then, with those new expectations in mind, I press refresh a couple more times, and when it sinks in that this one single tweet isn't going to lead me to my dream job and fix every facet of my life, that's usually when the disappointment sets in, and so I put away my phone and go on with my life. And again, this all happens in an instant, so I feel like just by taking the time to describe all these little moments that happen when I tweet, I'm making them seem way bigger than they actually are. Like, I feel like it's kind of like shooting a water balloon with a bullet, you know? The way it plays out in regular life isn't all that remarkable, but when you film it in super high definition slow motion, you see how the explosion actually looks frame by frame, and it's like, wow, that is way more intense than I was expecting. Still, just because all these little moments I just described are minuscule, that doesn't mean they aren't there. And like I said, just about every one of those tiny moments eventually leads to disappointment. It's a tiny disappointment, sure, but it's a disappointment nonetheless. I do my best to be very open in my videos, and because of that, I feel like I can sometimes say a lot of stuff that some might consider embarrassing, but truly, I have never and probably will never say anything more embarrassing than what I'm about to tell you right now. And That's that at one point, there was a part of me that genuinely believed that every single one of those tweets I just read you could have gone viral. Even the one about the non-dairy creamer. Granted, I didn't think it for very long because, like I said, this stuff all happens very fast, but there was a moment when every single one of those thoughts I read was the biggest thing inside of my head, and because of that, I felt like maybe they could be the biggest things inside of a lot of other people's heads too. If I didn't, then I don't think I would have felt the need to tweet it out. On some level, I think that other people will feel the same as me, and when they don't, it can make me feel isolated or unlikable or stupid or worthless or any number of other overreactions that probably aren't true, but it doesn't matter because in the moment it really feels like they are. And when I think about it like that, I start to feel like maybe tiny isn't the right word to describe my disappointments because, well, that all sounds pretty big, all things considered. The more I think about it, the more I feel like a better word to describe them would be imperceptible. They move by in an instant and then they're gone before I can even register just how big they really are, but that doesn't mean that they didn't leave an impact. I feel like it's kind of like the emotional equivalent of microplastics, these tiny little things that build up in your system without you even realizing it, and then before you know it, there's some real damage being done there. At least I think that's how microplastics work. I'm not emotionally strong enough to try and understand what's going on with microplastics. My insurance is not good enough to cover the many hypochondria-induced doctor's visits that would come from any amount of research that I might do. And who knows, maybe that means that after this is done, I'll stop tweeting altogether, although I feel like that's probably not what's going to happen. If we're being honest, even after everything I said today, I still really want to see how well that melatonin tweet does, so. Alright, it's my last day. I actually made it. Well, kinda. I guess I did cheat a little bit, but like I said, I don't really think that counts, so just be cool and ignore it. And you know, when I set out to make this video all those weeks ago, I had a lot of thoughts about how I was going to feel when I finally got to this point in the process. In my wildest dreams, I'd hoped that my change would have fixed all sorts of problems in my life. I thought I might come out the other side calmer and more relaxed and less anxious and a lot less bitter about every goddamn person, place, and thing around me. Of course, I wasn't any of those things yet, so I also worried that the opposite might be true. I worried I might get to this point feeling jittery and on edge and hopeless about the fact that I finally went through with this thing that I thought might fix everything and ended up in the exact same position that I've always been in. And now I'm finally here and I feel like neither thing is true. I basically just feel the same. Granted, I don't think that I am the same, but I do feel the same, if that makes sense. Like I said last time, I do feel like the main thing I've learned from this whole experience is that a lot of the negative thoughts and feelings that social media stirs up in me are tiny imperceptible things that build up over time. And because of that, any better feeling that might arise from them leaving my system will probably be tiny and imperceptible as well. Of course, that's only if they leave my system. I feel like there's a chance that all those little frags are just going to be in there forever, and even if I'm not adding new ones, that doesn't mean that the buildup I already had isn't still doing damage. And if that's the case, it makes me feel like maybe I should just stop fighting it and let all those tiny imperceptible feelings consume me from the inside out. Like, why should I miss out on all the good parts of social media in an effort to avoid the bad parts if the damage from the bad parts is already done? If the modern world has truly already doomed me to a life of low-key misery, shouldn't I at least get to see a couple of fun cat videos along the way? And like I said, this is all just how I feel right now. If I were in a cosmic casino being asked to take bets on the objective truth of my situation, I'd tell the omniscient roulette dealer to put everything I had on the idea that mentally I'm in a lot better place now than I was 30 days ago. Still, if that's the case, then I don't feel like it. And if I'm in a better place mentally but don't feel like it, then Am I actually in a better place mentally? I don't know. I feel like I'm being kind of negative today, so I'm going to cut this check-in a little short. I'm going to take a week and collect my thoughts, and then I'm going to meet you guys back here for one last final check-in. Hopefully with a little more time, I'll be able to end this thing on a happier note. Alright, I've given myself a couple of days to collect myself, and while I no longer feel like the soul-sucking emotional black hole that I was in my last check-in, I still contend that after a month of giving up social media, I feel about the same as I did when I started. I still have a lot of my same emotional hang-ups. I didn't develop superpowers, and I can't really pinpoint any aspects of my mental health that feel any different than they were 30 days ago. That said though, while I don't feel any mentally better than I did a month ago, I still contend that I am mentally better. I don't really know how to explain that one, but I do believe it to be true. Right now, there's absolutely nothing stopping me from signing back into Twitter and tweeting up a storm and stalking strangers to my heart's content, but I haven't done that yet. And believe me when I tell you that it's not because I don't want to. 30 days later, and I still haven't lost that reflexive urge to go online every chance that I get. 99% of my body wants to sign back in and put this stupid experiment behind me and instantly revert to all my old habits like this whole thing never even happened. But even though just about every ounce of me wants to completely throw away whatever progress I made in the past few weeks for a moment of serotonin, I haven't really done that yet. There's still something inside of me telling me that if I stay off, I'll be better off, and I feel like that's because my emotional self knows something that my mental self doesn't. Which is not to say that I haven't dipped my toes back into the water of social media. There have actually been 2 times in the past week when I tweeted, but I will contend that I had a good reason for doing so each time. The first time I tweeted was because I was going through some frustrating bullshit with a doctor's office, and I needed to get some things off my chest. The second time that I tweeted was because I was looking at furniture online, and I found a chair whose color was listed as poo brown, and I felt like I could not share that with the world because, well, I'm an idiot. And don't get me wrong, I could talk about poo brown for hours, and maybe I will in a later video, but for now I do kind of want to focus on the first of those tweets because those were the ones that brought me back online. The urge that I had to say those things was strong enough that it overpowered whatever subconscious restraints I had telling me to stay away. And because of that, I feel like understanding the forces that were powering that urge might be a good way to understand a question I've been asking myself all throughout this entire experiment, which is, why do I even bother with social media to begin with? And truth told, it's kind of a hard question to answer because I don't really think that there's just one answer I can give. I use social media for a lot of things. I use it to try and further my career, and I use it to maintain friendships, and I use it to try and create new friendships. I write on it, and read the news, and look at funny pictures. I closely monitor the lives of strangers, and then I become too invested in said strangers. Then I decide that I actually hate the strangers, and then I revel in their inevitable downfalls. I do all sorts of things on there, and they're not all related, so trying to figure out one single answer to what I want out of social media is really hard to do. But that said, I do feel like the closest I came to one came to me in the moments after I broke my Twitter fast and sent out those first couple of tweets. I won't go too deep into what was happening because I already ranted about it in a future video, but the cliff notes of the situation is that I needed a refill on a prescription that I very much need in order to function, and I couldn't get it, and I wasn't very happy about it. The situation required a lot of back and forths via email, and because the provider I was working with seemed to be very disorganized and understaffed, I was forced to basically just wait idly by for them to get around to dealing with me, and that really sucked. At that moment in time, my life was nothing but unknowns. I didn't know if I was going to get my medication. I didn't know what the next few months of my life would look like if I didn't. And perhaps most frustratingly of all, I didn't know if I was about to be charged a couple $100 for the shitty in-between place I found myself in. What's worse is I wouldn't have any answers for at least a few emails, and whoever was writing said emails was taking their sweet-ass time because they understandably weren't too keen on responding when they knew that odds were pretty good they were just going to get yelled at. I mean, for the record, I didn't yell at them because I'm way too passive for that, but as far as the person I was talking to knew, I probably should have. So it might sound dramatic to say, but waiting for a response made me feel like I was trapped a little bit. More than anything, I just wanted to get to that next level, and because I knew it wasn't going to happen anytime soon in my real life, I decided to take to Twitter. I think what I wanted more than anything from those tweets was just a little bit of progress, and in my own weird way, I think that I got it. Maybe I didn't get answers for all the unknowns that were plaguing me in that moment, but I got a little validation and let off a little steam, and at the time, that felt like enough. And really, I think that's what social media is all about. It's progress. Whether it's through networking or learning or just getting your next serotonin hit, I think that ultimately the point of social media is to allow us to feel like we're barreling towards some new, better future rather than being shackled to our present. And talking about being shackled, I can't help but think about how in the first one of my check-ins for this video, I brought up Plato's allegory of the cave, because, well, if we're being honest, it was a lot. I am, after all, making a very silly video where I go off of Twitter for 30 days, so bringing in philosophical ideas that I admittedly don't even fully understand myself feels unnecessary and maybe even a little bit pretentious. And while the gift of hindsight has allowed me to realize that I probably should have just cut that part from the script, there is actually a reason why I didn't do that. I feel like it probably won't surprise anyone watching this when I say that I do not have a plan for these videos. I go into these month-long experiments with absolutely no idea what I'm going to say, and if we're being honest, I have no clue how these things are going to turn out. And so to try and make sure that what I'm making doesn't turn into a long, meandering, incomprehensible mess, I do my best to leave myself little breadcrumbs as I go so that I can come back to them later on. Granted, it doesn't really seem to work because I do feel like both of the videos that I've done in this series have turned into long, meandering, incomprehensible messes, but I don't know. My point is that I'm trying my best. And so not to pull back the curtain on my writing process too hard, but I'm pretty sure that the reason I brought Plato into this YouTube video is because I was setting myself up for the conclusion that I thought I was building to. I think that when I started this thing way back when, I was expecting to get to a point where I realized that it's all bullshit. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Club Penguin. It's all just a bunch of shadows on the wall that we've been tricked into believing. I thought that once I stayed off for 30 days, I'd eventually get to the place where I realized that the real world is the one that exists off my screen. I'd say no more than throw my phone into the ocean so I could go run naked in a field and roll around in a bed of daisies. Unfortunately, here I am months later, and not only am I still wearing pants, but I also still have my phone in said pants, and I don't really see it going anywhere anytime soon. And the more I think about it, the more I think that I actually got it right the first time around. It's being offline that's the cave. Like, don't get me wrong, a lot of social media is bullshit, but most of the stuff that fucks with my head is very much real. News is bad, friends are hanging out without me, and people I have nothing but contempt for are leading very happy lives that fill me with nothing but disdain. If a month of being offline has taught me anything, it's that the reason social media is bad for me is the same reason that I still want to use it, even though I know that it's bad for me, and that's because it allows me to see way more of the world than I'd get to otherwise. In my quest for progress, I end up speeding through the world faster than I'm built for. My brain is constantly craving something new, but I feel like my body can't actually handle it. And when I think about it like that, it makes me feel like I've been looking at the allegory of the cave all wrong. Because I've heard many discussions of Plato's cave allegory over the course of my life, but I feel like one thing that never comes up in any of them is just how fucked up it is. Like, I feel like Plato kind of rattles it off so casually to get to his larger point about reality that you never stop to think like, okay, 1, who put these people in this cave? 2, what kind of sick shit is that dude into that he's done this to people? And 3, and perhaps most importantly, how fucked up must those people's lives be once they actually leave the cave and try to assimilate themselves back into the real world? In my mind, I've always kind of thought of the people getting out of the cave as a good thing because, I don't know, I guess now they get to see like colors and shit, but the more I think about it, the more I feel like they're probably better off just staying in there. I've seen stuff about people who were trapped in caves for like only a month, and even they needed to wear some pretty heavy duty sunglasses in order to adjust to the sunlight once they were finally rescued. I can only imagine how much help someone would need adjusting when they've been trapped in there their entire life. When I used to smoke weed, I would often do my best to try and imagine a color that I've never seen before, and that alone usually would give me a headache. I can't possibly try to comprehend how my body might react to suddenly being shown 7 colors I had never seen before, but I feel like at least 2 buckets worth of vomit would have to be involved. Maybe they shouldn't be shackled, but I do feel like if I were the people in the cave, then the smart thing to do would be to go back to the life that my body is built for, even if that might feel a little stifling now that I know how much more is out there. And I guess the case could be made that I am those people, and yet I haven't fully gone back into that cave yet, even though I know I should, and I don't know if I ever will. I've spent so much time of my life on social media that it's kind of weird how I don't think I've ever stopped to ask myself what it is that I want out of it. After all, if it really is all about progress, then I feel like progress is by its very nature leading to something, and I don't really know what that something is. And again, it's complicated because I feel like it's a lot of some things, but if I were to do my best and really think about what my ultimate goal for social media would be, it would probably be to get to the point where I'm the sort of person who doesn't need social media in my life anymore. Whether it's landing my dream job, or having all the friends in the world, or just generally being happy from moment to moment, I feel like all the things that I want out of being online ultimately lead to me signing off. And if that really is the case, then it's absolutely insane because there's no way that I'm going to get to a place where I feel like I have enough by spending more and more time adjusting my body to some brave new world that's all about more. In one of my check-ins, I referred to social media as social infinity, and if we're being honest, I'm not sure if even I fully understood what I meant by that because, well, I kind of just say stuff sometimes. That said, though, the more I think about it, the more I agree with myself. Again, still not entirely sure what I meant by it, but still, I agree. Social media is this huge, infinite thing, and because of that, to try and use it as a means to a finite end isn't really going to work out for me because, well, no matter how close I get, there's always just gonna be more and more. Like I said, I feel like social media is all about moving forward as fast as you can, but the sad truth is that it doesn't matter how fast you can move when you're on an infinite path. You're never gonna reach the end. And because of that, ironically, I feel like if my goal is to get to a point where I don't feel like I need this stuff anymore, then the fastest way I can get there is to try and go back to taking things a little bit slower. Rather than staying on this infinite path, I should just veer off it altogether and take a shortcut to that impossible end. I may not end up hitting all the points I thought I would along the way, but if I really want to make it to that place I think I'm chasing after, I feel like that's probably the only way to get there. And hopefully that means I'll get off social media completely one day, but as for now, I feel like I'm just not there yet because, I don't know, it's really hard. At the very least, though, I do think that I'm going to use it a little bit less going forward because, Well, at least now I know that I can. I swear to God I'm not making this up, but there was one tweet in my list of tweets that I felt at the time was so terrible that even in the context of me reading all of my tweets to make fun of them, I couldn't bring myself to say it out loud. I wasn't sure if I wrote it down ironically or if I genuinely thought I was making some deep point, but whatever the case is, it is bad. Like really bad. Like honestly terrible, especially since I am not the first person to think of it. The idea that I spent 10 seconds of my life jotting this thought down is deeply shameful, and when I am on my deathbed, I will think about the moments I lost to it and feel nothing but regret. Still, the more I think about it, the more I think that I might need to put shame aside and read it to you guys anyway, because as stupid and obvious and pretentious as this unsent tweet might be, I also think that it might be the best way for me to end this episode. So, like, no judgments, but here it goes. It's weird that it's called content, and yet we never are. Yeah, I hate myself too. But anyway, that's the episode, so please like and subscribe and share and subscribe to my Patreon. Thank you again to Casey by way of Doug. Very much appreciate that one. Yeah. But yeah, this is the part where I don't have a script to say anymore, so I don't have good things to say, so let's just cut it there. Actually, no, obviously that wasn't the ending, because now it's time for everyone's favorite part of the show. Willie poses for a thumbnail while his patron's names scroll across the screen. And for this one, I think I'm going to say I went off social media for a month and it drove me crazy, because that sounds kind of more evocative than just going off social media for a month. So I think what I'm going to do is pose in a way that makes me look crazy. So like, whoa, whoa, wah. I don't know, maybe I should have my pipe again. That looked good. It's caught in the door. Ow. Okay. Ah! Ah! What other props do I have that will make me look crazy? I have a pearl necklace for some reason. Maybe if I like clutch my pearls. That's definitely going to sound really loud on my microphone. Maybe I should just do a more normal one, like... I don't like doing this. They're really hard to edit my hands. One more crazy one. Ah! Hopefully there's something in there, but if not, doesn't really matter because this video is not going to do very well anyway. Bye!